Stupid Simple Plan. Music for dumb little kids. Hate them. Chances are, if you have an opinion on pop punk or punk rock in general, you have an opinion on Simple Plan. At some point, we'll have to have a debate about who is the most polarizing pop punk band of all time. And I think it's a safe bet to say Simple Plan would be a #1 seed in that bracket. But what is it that makes Simple Plan so dang polarizing? It might be the nasally vocals, the childish lyrical content, the cliche pop punk look, or the formulaic song arrangements. Probably all of the above. Those are fair criticisms of the band, but they've sold like a bazillion albums, so they must have done something right. So why the heck am I even bringing up Simple Plan right now? Well, believe it or not, this month marks the 20th anniversary of their debut album, No Helmets, No Pads, Just Balls. Great name, by the way. Hey, future Robert here. I thought the name of the album was so great that I said it wrong on the video. Let's be clear, it's no pads, no helmets, just balls. Hope that clears things up. It's hard to believe that an album that is so associated with adolescence is almost at drinking age. But alas, it's getting old, and so am I, so it's time to talk.
And fear of aging is natural, it's universal, isn't it? We all have that. No one wants to get old, no one wants to die, but we do.
I'll be honest, I think Simple Plan is a little misunderstood. There's a perception that many pop punk bands that blossomed into successful pop acts did so as overnight sensations. To be clear, being an overnight sensation is not a bad thing in and of itself. If it's good, it's good. Doesn't matter how long it took to get there. But the appeal of seeing success for someone or something that has paid their theoretical dues, it is satisfying. And you might be able to make the argument that Simple Plan proper is to a degree an overnight sensation. The band formed in '99, and by 2001 they were signed to a major, and in early 2002 they had a hit on their hands. By a certain standard, they were instant stars. And to be fair, you'd have to be pretty plugged in to have known about Simple Plan prior to their first single being released. But that doesn't tell the whole story of the band. Simple Plan may have been a relatively new band in 2002, but their members had been creating punk rock together long before they ever had a hit on TRL. The origins of Simple Plan actually lie in Canadian skate punk band Reset. Future Simple Plan members Pierre, Chuck, and David all spent time in Reset throughout the 90s. Touring, releasing albums, the whole punk rock deal. And I've got to say, this stuff is actually pretty fun. You should check it out. It's like an alternate universe where Simple Plan is evolved from Pennywise. It's not quite full-on skate punk, but it doesn't quite have the melodic hooks that their later music would come to have. This is some good stuff, and good find. Glad I found them doing research for this video. My point with that whole digression was just to point out that these guys were not some Milli Vanilli pop stars that were created by the machine. However, once they became a part of the machine, they were pretty unstoppable. Still are to this day. Let's talk a little bit about the origin story. Now, I'm not going to go over any specific details, just noting that they did get together in about mid-'99, members of Reset and some old high school friends. And yeah, things did progress pretty quickly for them. They were signed relatively quickly. They actually lodged a spot on the Pop Disaster tour that I talked about in the Green Day video. And once the album was released, it went platinum in both the US and Canada. Not to mention they even had a Mark Hoppus feature before that was like the cool thing to do. At the onset of the new millennium, Simple Plan would see a steady increase in popularity. They would even snag a headlining role on the '03 Warped Tour. Side note, I actually saw them on the '03 Warped Tour, and I gotta say, it was kind of funny because a lot of the younger crowd was checking them out. And then they busted out their cover of American Jesus by Bad Religion. And suddenly all the old guys in the back that didn't care for him were really excited about this weird Canadian band that was on the stage. Don't know what the point of that digression was, and I fumble my words, but okay. And of course, like many of the big bands from that era, they received pretty good airplay on places like MTV with their music videos. They were even featured on the soundtrack for the film The New Guy. And if memory serves me correctly, they became more embedded as pop stars actually with their sophomore album, but this is where it all got kicked off. Any band that flies the flag of punk rock and becomes a massive success is gonna face criticism. That's to be expected. But I kind of feel like the reasons to dislike Simple Plan are probably pretty specific to the band. For one, people really took issue with the vocal stylings here. People don't like that nasally, high-pitched vocal stylings of pop punk in general. Whether you're a punker or just a general pop fan, that's something that can be a turnoff to some. And I don't think anybody really defined that sound more so than Simple Plan. And yeah, the song structures, they are simple and repetitive, but that's kind of part of the whole pop punk formula. They're not that repetitive when you actually take a look at what's going on. Just from the outside, that's always a criticism that's been leveled at punk rock since the Ramones, so that's nothing new. And of course, you're always going to get the criticism that they were gravy training on a popular fad. And like I mentioned, that might be technically true, but I think I kind of disproved that a few minutes ago in this video. Those are all common pop punk objections. But if I had to pinpoint one area of hatred where Simple Plan excels, it's in their immature lyrical content. Now, let me be clear, it's a slightly different strain of immaturity than a band like Blink-182. A band like Blink is giving off the vibe of being the guys that are in their later years of high school or early college, but still entertained by middle school toilet humor. Whereas Simple Plan is more of the guys in middle school working through the angst that they're feeling at that time. To be honest, I can understand why that would turn off some people. As I said before, if you discover Simple Plan, specifically their first two albums outside of youth, it would probably be a real challenge to get into them. With that said, pop music is always tailored towards a younger demographic. That's not specific to punk rock or pop punk at all. I just think it was a little more explicit with Simple Plan. But if we're being honest, there's a lot of adults that blast music where the music videos take place in a high school gym. It's a trope as old as time. Maybe not as old as time, but it goes back a ways. Those are some of the basic reasons why people didn't like Simple Plan. But despite all those reasons, they resonated with some people. They resonated with me. I am some people. Even when I would go through phases where I didn't like a lot of pop punk because it wasn't real punk, I always kind of had a soft spot for Simple Plan. Don't know why. Just kind of always did. I think there's a few reasons though why the general public actually really embraced this band. The first reason, and most importantly, as always, any good band writes good songs, and they wrote good songs. Plain and simple. Also, the production is really, really good on this album. And I know a lot of the mass-produced pop punk had really good production, but I feel like a lot of it you could always go back and nitpick with, whereas Simple Plan, not so much. Maybe it's a function of the fact that they were never really an underground band, so we never got to hear their, not so good stuff. We never got to hear a Cheshire Cat or Buddha for Simple Plan, so that might play into it. And finally, they're relatable. Maybe to a fault. But I don't think that's a bad thing. I think if you were a kid in the early 2000s, it was really easy to dress like Simple Plan, to kind of copy some of their hijinks, and to really relate to their lyrics. Going back to the album, I think the songs can be broken down into two broad categories. There's the angsty songs and the relationship songs. I'd do anything, when I'm with you, addicted, my alien, I won't be there. Those are really in the relationship category. The worst day ever, just a kid, God must hate me, perfect in one day. Those would go into the angsty category. There's also kind of a middle ground that could go either way with songs like You Don't Mean Anything and Meet You There. They dip their toes into both pools. As much as Simple Plan is known for their bouncy pop punk anthems, I think the sappy mid-tempo songs like Meet You There and Perfect are where they really shine on this album. It's been memed to death, but I think Perfect is a really, really good song. Maybe if it didn't have the line of like, hey dad, look at me now, it wouldn't be considered so cheesy, but it's a good song nonetheless. And as I said about the production, I think that song sounds great, especially for a pop punk song. Ultimately, my whole point in this video, and I have rambled a lot, is just to say that Simple Plan is, yes, not for everyone. But it's not fair to judge them by who they appeal to. I think we should judge them by who they are and what they produced. And for over 20 years, they've produced some pretty fun music that a whole generation of people are really into. There's a reason why they can still tour to this day. There's a reason they still play festivals and they still release new music, because they resonated with people. And that did happen. Whether we want to admit that it happened or not, it did. And I think it's time that they get their fair due from everybody in the community. Maybe not everybody, just a few people. Whatever. I'm still rambling. Talk to you next time.